I'm Maya Torres, 27, a marketing manager who got sick of fake success. They said I was crazy for buying Grandpa's rundown beef farm. A year later, those same people who mocked me were begging to join my business. Because here's the truth, when you stop chasing approval, you start printing power. When I told my parents I spent my savings on Grandpa's abandoned beef farm, they laughed so hard my dad nearly choked on his coffee. "Bees, you're gonna play farmer now." I smiled, because deep down, I knew something they didn't. I was done building their version of success. They laughed, of course they did, because people always laugh when they don't understand what you're doing, when your dream doesn't fit inside their version of logic. They smiled that condescending, polite smile that says, "You'll learn." They told everyone at dinner that I'd lost it, that I'd thrown away everything I'd worked for. Because who in their right mind would spend their savings on a dying beef farm? Who walks away from a promising career to shovel dirt and scrape honey from rotting wood? Only an idiot, apparently. But here's the thing, that laughter burned hotter than any insult. It wasn't just amusement, it was disbelief mixed with arrogance. The kind of laughter that says, "You'll be back." And maybe that's what they were counting on, that I'd fail fast enough to crawl back, embarrassed, grateful to fit neatly into the life they'd already written for me. But I didn't crawl. I walked away, straight into the mess. Straight into the silence of land no one wanted anymore. Straight into the sound of buzzing that felt like rebellion. The farm wasn't beautiful, not at first. It smelled like mold and memory. Grandpa's tools were still hanging in the shed, rusted ghosts of a man who believed in slow work and soil. The hives were cracked open, frames chewed by time, the bees long gone or dead. The ground was littered with the bones of things that once mattered: his hat, his boots, a half-finished jar of honey turned solid in the sun. It was chaos, but it was *mine, and that was enough. The first night, I sat on the porch and listened to the crickets echo through the empty fields. It was the loudest silence I'd ever heard. No traffic, no notifications, no one telling me what I should be doing with my life. Just me and the weight of a decision everyone said was stupid. And maybe it was, but stupidity has its own kind of freedom, the kind that makes you reckless enough to try something no one else believes in. See, most people want safety. They crave the guarantee that their effort won't go to waste. They want certainty before they even start. But certainty is a cage dressed up as comfort. You can't build anything real inside it. So I decided to trade it for risk, raw, uncomfortable, unpredictable risk. The kind that strips away every excuse until all that's left is truth. And the truth was simple. I didn't want to live a life that looked successful but felt empty. The first few weeks broke me. The work was brutal. My hands bled from pulling weeds and fixing fences. The bees I managed to buy stung me every other day, sometimes on purpose, or at least that's how it felt. I didn't know what I was doing. I burned through savings faster than I'd expected. There were nights I cried into the dirt, furious at myself for thinking I could do this. And yet, every morning, I woke up and kept going. Because pain, at least, was proof I was alive, and finally building something for myself. There's something sacred about starting over where everyone else gave up. You begin to see beauty in failure. You learn that it's not the world that stops you, it's the voice in your head whispering you can't. The one that sounds suspiciously like everyone who ever doubted you. I started ignoring that voice. I started listening to the hum of the bees, to the way the land sighed when the sun hit it just right. I started trusting something wilder than logic, instinct. And slowly, the land started to trust me back. The bees multiplied. The honey thickened. The flowers came back. I began selling small jars at the local market, barely breaking even, but feeling richer than I ever had behind any desk. Because this wasn't about money yet. It was about power. Not the loud kind that demands attention, but the quiet kind that comes from knowing you built something real while everyone else waited for permission. When they laughed, they thought they were predicting my failure. What they didn't realize is that laughter is just fear dressed as superiority. People mock what threatens their comfort. They hate seeing someone do what they're too scared to attempt. And nothing is scarier than watching someone walk away from everything secure and still find joy. That's the part that eats them alive. So let them laugh. Let them roll their eyes and whisper. Because every time they do, they remind you why you started, not to prove them wrong, but to prove to yourself that you could live without their approval. And once you taste that freedom, their opinions become background noise. You realize the most dangerous thing you can do is build a life that makes sense to everyone but you. A year later, the laughter stopped. But by then, I'd already learned the lesson. Nothing is more satisfying than growing something from nothing, especially when everyone said it was impossible. Because that's the moment you stop asking, "What if I fail?" and start daring to ask, "What if I fly?" The farm was dying when I found it, and honestly, so was a part of me. Everything about that place screamed *quit. The soil was hard and cracked, the barn looked one strong wind away from collapsing, and the air smelled like dust and regret. Even the bees that remained buzzed weakly, like they'd given up too. It was the kind of place people drive past and think, someone should really tear that down. But I didn't want to tear it down. I wanted to resurrect it, and maybe, by doing that, resurrect myself. I didn't grow up knowing how to do any of this. My hands were used to keyboards, not dirt. My idea of nature was a city park with Wi-Fi. But standing there, surrounded by silence and decay, I realized something sharp. I had spent my whole life learning how to perform, not how to *live. Every move I'd made before was about looking successful, fitting the mold, staying in line. The bee farm shattered that illusion. It didn't care about my degree, my resume, or my carefully curated goals. The land only responded to effort, not ego. There's a strange kind of honesty in manual work. You can't fake it. If you don't dig deep enough, the roots don't come out. If you don't fix the hive properly, the bees die. There's no middle ground, no office politics to hide behind. It's you versus the mess, and the mess always tells the truth. I started to realize how much of my old life was built on pretending. Pretending I was happy. Pretending I was driven. Pretending I was okay working for people who didn't care if I ever felt alive. The farm stripped all of that away. It humbled me. It forced me to face the parts of myself I'd buried under busyness. At first, every mistake felt like a personal failure. The hives collapsed from mold. My first batch of honey fermented and spoiled. I wasted hours fixing things that didn't need fixing and ignored the things that did. There were moments I stood in that empty field, covered in mud, crying so hard I couldn't breathe. But then something inside me shifted, the realization that the land wasn't punishing me. It was teaching me. Every mistake was feedback. Every problem was a lesson in resilience. The kind that no book or boss could ever give. People stopped calling after a while. The texts slowed. The checking in messages disappeared. I think they didn't know what to say, or maybe they didn't want to see me struggling because it reminded them of their own dreams they'd abandoned. That isolation hurt at first. But then it became fuel. I didn't need applause anymore. I just needed progress. So I kept going. I learned to fix fences from YouTube videos. I learned to talk to local farmers without feeling like an imposter. I learned that exhaustion feels different when it's tied to something meaningful. The farm started to change slowly, almost imperceptibly. A single hive turned into 3. A patch of wildflowers returned after a season of rain. The first healthy swarm arrived, and for the first time I understood why my grandfather had loved this place. There's a rhythm to nature, a brutal, honest rhythm. Nothing happens overnight. You can't force it. You can't outsmart it. You just have to respect it, show up, and put in the work every damn day. And in that rhythm, I started to see myself differently. I wasn't the failure they predicted. I was the seed they underestimated. Growth doesn't look pretty in the middle. It looks like chaos, confusion, dirt, and sweat. But underneath all that, roots are forming. And that's the part no one sees, the silent transformation before the bloom. The farm wasn't my downfall. It was my mirror. It showed me everything fake I'd been clinging to. It showed me that survival isn't about looking strong, it's about adapting, about staying when everyone else leaves. It's about having the audacity to rebuild something the world already labeled dead. So while they were laughing, I was learning. While they were talking, I was listening to the bees, to the wind, to the version of myself that had been waiting to be heard. The land was rotting, sure, but buried inside that rot was something alive, something defiant. And that's exactly what I decided to become. The stings came fast, sharper, meaner, and far more personal than I expected. The bees didn't care about my enthusiasm or good intentions. They didn't care that I was trying. They punished every mistake with precision. Every time I reached for a hive too quickly, every time I forgot to move slowly, to breathe, to respect their rhythm, they reminded me who was really in charge. It wasn't me. It was nature. It was reality. And it had teeth. At first, I took every sting like a failure. I'd rip off my gloves, swear, stomp around the field like some stubborn child trying to fight a storm. But then I started noticing something strange. The stings hurt less. Not because the bees got kinder, but because I stopped resisting the pain. I learned to stand still, to let the sting happen, to breathe through it. There was power in that surrender. The more I accepted the pain, the less it controlled me. That was when it hit me. Every dream worth chasing has its own version of stings. Not from bees, but from people, from circumstances, from your own fear. Everyone wants the honey, the reward, the sweetness, the validation, but nobody wants to get stung for it. They want shortcuts, guarantees, safety nets, but nothing real grows in safety. Growth happens in the sting, in the discomfort, in the moments that tear your ego apart and force you to start again without the armor. I started seeing those welts on my arms as proof that I was showing up, proof that I wasn't just talking about change, I was bleeding for it. The city had numbed me, this place woke me up. I'd spent years being comfortable, which is just another word for asleep. Every sting was a jolt back into awareness. It reminded me that I was alive, raw, present, building something that didn't need to be understood by anyone else. There were days the stings came from more than bees. Some came from watching money disappear faster than it came in. Some came from loneliness that hit like a wave after sunset. Some came from doubt, that cruel whisper that said maybe they were right, maybe I was wasting my life. But pain is information if you know how to listen. Each sting forced me to adapt, to harden in the right ways and soften in others. I learned to pay attention, not just to the bees, but to myself. To notice the patterns, the triggers, the quiet moments when things started working, because I finally stopped trying to control them. There's a rhythm to pain, the moment before it hits, the sharp flash, then the calm after. I began to recognize that same rhythm in life, the tension before a failure, the fall, the stillness that follows. And somewhere in that stillness, if you're patient enough, growth begins. The bees taught me that resilience isn't about avoiding pain, it's about learning how to dance with it. I stopped using gloves eventually, not because I wanted to prove something, but because I wanted to feel it. The stings didn't scare me anymore, they grounded me. Every time one landed, it was like the world whispering, "You're still here, you're still trying, you haven't quit." And I realized the opposite of fear isn't courage, it's commitment. When you're truly committed, fear loses its leverage. It can sting, but it can't stop you. People think success is built on strategy. It's not. It's built on endurance, the willingness to keep standing there, swollen and sore, when everyone else runs from the hive. It's built on the quiet confidence that you can take the pain and still keep moving. Every sting that used to make me want to quit now made me smirk. Because I knew, the more it hurt, the closer I was getting to something real. That's what the bees taught me. That sweetness demands suffering. That the world doesn't reward your intentions, it rewards your resilience. That pain is the price of transformation. And that every sting, no matter how sharp, is just another reminder, you're earning your honey. The grind was relentless. The kind that doesn't make good Instagram stories, just sweat, dirt, and quiet failure. Mornings started before sunrise, when the air still felt heavy with dew and silence. I'd pull on the same mud-stained boots, grab a coffee that tasted more like exhaustion than caffeine, and step outside to face another day of uncertainty. Every task took longer than it should have. Every victory was microscopic. But progress, no matter how small, started to stack, and that's the part no one ever tells you about the grind. It doesn't explode, it builds in silence. The days blurred together. Harvesting honey, cleaning frames, repairing fences, hauling supplies from town, building a website that looked amateur at best. I'd crash into bed every night with my muscles screaming, hands sticky with honey and dirt. There were no weekends, no vacations, no days off. Just the constant hum of bees and the relentless voice in my head saying, "keep going." That voice wasn't motivation, it was survival. I sold my first jars at a farmer's market. No one knew who I was, no one cared. People glanced, smiled politely, and moved on to the next booth. But a few stopped. They tasted the honey, asked questions, looked surprised that it was mine. Those few were enough. Because when you're building from nothing, validation doesn't come in applause, it comes in inches. One jar sold. One customer returned. One person said, "This tastes different." And they were right. It was different. It tasted like defiance. Money didn't come fast, but pride did. Real pride, not the fake kind you post online to prove you're doing fine. The kind that builds quietly inside your ribs because you know you earned it. Every sale paid for a new hive, a better extractor, a sturdier fence. Every small reinvestment felt like rebellion against the people who told me it would never work. The grind wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. It gave more than it took, eventually. Still, it wasn't easy. There were nights I wanted to give up, nights when I stared at spreadsheets that didn't add up and wondered if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. But here's the truth. The grind doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't care if you're tired or scared or doubting yourself. It only asks one question: will you show up again tomorrow? Most people don't. That's why they never get to taste what's on the other side. I learned that consistency is more powerful than motivation. Motivation fades, it's a spark. Consistency is the fire that keeps burning long after excitement dies. So I showed up, even when I didn't want to, especially when I didn't want to, and over time, something shifted. The same market that ignored me started recognizing me. The local grocery store placed an order, then another. Then a cafe wanted my honey for their lattes. The growth was small, steady, and real, like honey dripping slowly from the comb. People around town started talking, not in that pitying tone they used before, but with curiosity. They started saying words like impressive and unexpected. And even though I told myself I didn't care what they thought, hearing that felt good, not because I needed their approval, but because it meant the work was visible now. It meant the grind was finally speaking for itself. I'd look at my hands sometimes, calloused, scarred, a few faded sting marks, and realize they didn't look like mine anymore. They looked like the hands of someone who built things, someone who endured. That realization was worth more than any paycheck I'd ever gotten. Because the grind had done something no job ever could. It made me believe in my own capacity to create. While everyone else was scrolling through fake perfection, I was out there getting stung, sweating through old shirts, scraping honey from wood, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't jealous of anyone. I didn't want their version of success. I didn't want their filtered happiness. I just wanted this: the grind, the growth, the quiet power of knowing I'd earned every inch of it. That's what the grind does to you. It breaks you down, strips you bare, and then rebuilds you into someone who doesn't need validation anymore. You stop waiting for results to feel proud. You start finding pride in the effort itself. You start realizing that the real reward isn't the honey you sell, it's the person you become while making it. It happens suddenly, the kind of shift you don't notice until it's too big to ignore. One post, one photo, one moment that caught fire. I'd been documenting the farm quietly online, not expecting much. Just short clips of bees swarming, golden honey dripping, the sound of wind through the hives. One day, a video of me bottling honey in the barn, hands sticky, hair a mess, sunlight cutting through the dust, went viral. I didn't plan it, didn't script it. It was just real. And apparently, real was what people were starving for. Within days, my phone turned into chaos. Orders flooded in. Emails, DMs, wholesale inquiries. People wanted my honey, the one that came from the useless farm everyone had laughed about. I stayed up all night labeling jars, handwriting thank you notes, refreshing the website until the numbers didn't even feel real anymore. For the first time, I wasn't chasing something, it was chasing me. That's when the calls started. My parents, the same voices that had told me I was wasting my life, the same ones who'd rolled their eyes when I said I wanted to rebuild Grandpa's legacy. Suddenly, they wanted to visit the farm, just to see how things are going. Then it became, we could help you manage orders. Then, we should talk about expanding as a family. The irony was so sharp it almost made me laugh. But I didn't gloat. I didn't throw their words back at them. I didn't need to. Success had already done that for me. It's funny how quiet people get when your results start speaking louder than their opinions. Their laughter turned into curiosity. Their judgment turned into advice. Their doubt turned into sudden support. It was all so predictable and so satisfying. What they didn't understand was that by the time they came around, I didn't need their approval anymore. I had built this without them, through every sting, every sleepless night, every ounce of doubt I had to choke down. They weren't showing up to help me grow. They were showing up because they wanted a piece of what I'd already built. That's the thing about success, it doesn't just change you, it exposes them. Still, part of me softened, because beneath their pride and their sudden enthusiasm was something else: guilt. They saw what they almost killed with their laughter. They saw that my defiance had turned into something undeniable. I let them visit. I watched my father walk through the same field he once called a graveyard for dreams. He stood there quietly, looking at the hives, the buzzing life around him, the jars stacked neatly on the shelves. I didn't have to say anything. The silence said it all. They asked questions now, real ones, about the process, about the bees, about how I managed to do it alone. My mother tried the honey and said it tasted like something familiar. Maybe she meant regret, maybe she meant respect. Either way, I let her keep the jar. It's strange how the tables turn, how the people who doubted you start quoting your courage like they were part of it. They start using "we" when they talk about your success. We built this. We always believed in you. But deep down, you remember who was laughing when you were covered in mud and failure. You remember who disappeared when you needed a hand and who showed up only when it was safe to clap. I realized then that revenge doesn't always look like shouting or proving someone wrong with words. Sometimes, it looks like peace. Like standing in the middle of everything they said you couldn't do and realizing you don't even need their apology. Because winning quietly hits harder than gloating loudly. So I smiled when they offered to help. I thanked them when they said they were proud. I let them believe whatever they needed to. But inside, I knew the truth. I'd already done the hardest part. I didn't build a farm to make anyone believe in me. I built it to remember that I could believe in myself. And now, as the orders grew and the world started to see what I'd created, I couldn't help but think of Grandpa. He'd always said, "Bees don't care who's watching, they just work." I finally understood what he meant. Because that was me now, working, building, creating, no longer waiting to be seen, just doing the work because the work itself was the victory. That's the moment success stopped feeling like revenge and started feeling like freedom. The farm doesn't look like the same place anymore. The dirt that once smelled like decay now hums with life. The air is thick with the sound of bees, thousands of them, moving in rhythm, working like a single heartbeat. Rows of hives stand where weeds used to choke the ground. The barn that was half collapsing now glows with warm lights at night, filled with shelves of honey jars, amber, golden, dark, each one labeled, sealed, and sold before it even cools. The same land everyone told me was worthless is now the reason I wake up every morning with fire in my chest. People visit now, strangers who saw the videos, customers who fell in love with the story. They walk through the fields with awe, snapping photos, whispering about how peaceful it feels. They don't see the scars, the nights of crying in the dirt, the mornings I doubted everything, the blood in the soil. They only see the beauty, the result, the dream come true. But that's fine. Let them see the honey. I'll remember the sting. The brand I built from nothing has become something real, 6 figures in profit, partnerships, shelves in boutique stores. The name that once made people snicker is now a logo people trust. I've hired a small team, locals who believe in the same things I do: sustainability, slow work, respect for the land. We ship nationwide now. My inbox is filled with opportunities instead of bills. But the most surreal moment isn't the numbers. It's when I catch myself standing in the middle of it all, realizing I actually did it. And yet the victory doesn't taste like I thought it would. It's sweeter, yes, but quieter, more grounded. Because success isn't fireworks, it's the peace that settles in your bones when you know you earned every inch of it. It's the calm you feel when you stop running from who you are. I used to think I wanted revenge, but what I really wanted was self-respect. And now I have it, more valuable than any apology, louder than any praise. My parents come around often now. They don't laugh anymore. They help pack jars, attend markets, tell people they're so proud. My dad even wears one of our branded shirts. I let them. I don't correct the narrative. They can believe they were part of the journey if it makes them feel better. Because the truth is, I'm not angry anymore. I don't need to be. They doubted what they couldn't see, and that's okay. Most people do. Belief only grows where courage lives, and courage is rare. Sometimes, when I'm walking the fields alone, I imagine Grandpa watching. I can almost hear his chuckle in the wind, that quiet, knowing sound of someone who saw this coming long before I did. He believed in the bees. He believed in the dirt. He believed in the slow process, the idea that good things grow if you just keep showing up. I finally understand that. He didn't leave me a broken farm. He left me a blueprint for patience. The irony of it all still makes me smile. The same people who once told me to get a real job now ask for advice on starting their own side hustles. They want to know how I did it, how I turned a dying farm into something thriving. They want the steps, the hacks, the secret formula, but the truth is there wasn't one. I didn't manifest it. I didn't luck into it. I worked. Through the stings, through the loneliness, through the fear. And that's what no one wants to hear. that the only magic is persistence. What I built isn't just a business. It's a declaration. Proof that you can rewrite the story everyone else wrote for you. Proof that impossible just means not yet. Proof that sometimes the ugliest beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings if you're brave enough to endure the middle. So when people visit now and ask me how it feels to have made it, I tell them this. It feels like freedom. It feels like standing barefoot on the land that almost broke me and realizing it built me instead. It feels like forgiveness, not for them, but for myself, for ever doubting what I was capable of. The farm isn't just alive again. It's thriving, and so am I, because what they once called useless became my foundation. What they mocked became my power. And what they dismissed as failure became the proof that I was never broken, just buried. And now, standing in the golden hum of 1,000 bees, I know one thing for sure. They can laugh all they want. But I built something they'll never understand, a life that stings and still tastes like honey. They say revenge is sweet, but that's a lie. It's not sweet. It's sharp. It cuts clean through the noise and leaves only truth behind. It's the silence after they stop laughing, the quiet respect they can't admit out loud. It's watching the same people who doubted you try to copy you, realizing too late that your fire can't be replicated. That's the real sting. Not that you won, but that you did it without them. There's a moment when success finally settles in that you start to see it all differently. You stop chasing validation. You stop needing applause. You start to understand that the world doesn't owe you understanding, only the opportunity to prove yourself. And when you do, when you finally rise from the dirt they buried you in, you realize something brutal. You were never fighting them. You were fighting the part of you that believed them. That's who needed to die for you to live. People will tell you they meant well. They'll say they were just worried. Don't waste your energy hating them. They couldn't see what you saw. They didn't have your vision, your hunger, your nerve. Most people never do. They live their whole lives behind fear disguised as logic, calling it safety. They laugh at risk takers because they're terrified of what it would mean if courage actually worked. Your success threatens their comfort. That's why they tried to talk you out of it. But you did it anyway. You built something from the scraps. You endured the sting, the grind, the silence, the mockery. You stood in the storm until it turned into sunlight. And that's what makes your victory so dangerous, not because it's big, but because it's real. Because you didn't just win, you changed. You stopped waiting for permission. You stopped asking to be believed in. You became your own proof. And now they come to you with questions, with admiration, with excuses disguised as compliments. You were always so determined, they say. No, you were just done living small. You were done playing safe. You were done being quiet about your potential. And that decision, that one reckless, defiant decision, was the start of everything. So here's the truth, the one no one likes to hear. You don't need their faith, you need your fight. You don't need a plan that makes sense to everyone. You need the guts to start before you're ready, to fall flat, to look stupid, to bleed for something that only you can see. Because that's how every real dream begins, in laughter, in doubt, in isolation. And if you can survive that, you can survive anything. Don't wait for them to understand. They'll catch up when it's convenient. Let them. Let them talk, let them question, let them mock. None of it matters, because while they're busy doubting, you'll be busy building. And by the time they notice, it'll be too late. The thing they said would fail will already be thriving. Revenge isn't a scream. It's a quiet smile. It's the calm in your chest when you realize you don't need to prove a damn thing anymore. It's knowing you did exactly what they said you couldn't, and then some. It's standing in the life you built from ashes and saying, I told you so, without ever opening your mouth. So here's your challenge. Stop waiting to be understood. Stop needing to be liked. Stop explaining yourself to people who haven't earned the right to hear your plans. Go build. Go fail. Go sting. Go rise. Because at the end of it all, there's only one kind of revenge that matters, the kind where you outgrow every single person who once made you doubt yourself. Let them laugh now. Let them call you crazy, foolish, naive. They always will until they can't. And when that day comes, when they finally realize you were never the joke, you'll already be too far ahead to hear them. Because real revenge isn't sweet. It's freedom. And freedom, my friend, tastes better than honey ever will. You don't owe anyone proof of your potential. You owe yourself the nerve to prove them wrong.